Race relations appear to be at their worst point in decades. 69% of Americans say race relations are bad. That is 1 point higher than the previous all-time record of 68% back in 1992. Those numbers came out just after the LA riots following the Rodney King beating verdict. Ben Jealous, the former CEO and president of the NAACP, is with me now from Baltimore. Good to have you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, Ben, let me ask you, the number of Americans viewing race relations has gone up nearly 50%, people who view it as bad, in the last 7 years. Why do you think things have gotten so divisive so quickly?
You know, look, we've had a Rodney King case every year, sometimes every week, sometimes every day, for about that long. At the same time, we've had Donald Trump out there, first saying that the president was not truly a citizen, pushing this lie. He was born in Kenya, really giving voice to the ugliest part of race relations in our country historically. And now the guy's actually running for president, may become president. So this has been a time, I think, of sort of unprecedented sadness and unprecedented rawness in our racial politics.
So in this new CBS News poll, 41% of Americans mostly agree with Black Lives Matter, while 25% mostly disagree. Do you think this movement is helping or hurting the cause it is trying to promote?
This movement is very much helping. It is in the tradition of the NAACP at its founding, when we were really started to end lynch mob violence in this country. It's a tradition of truth-telling and, quite frankly, of shaming localities out of the practice. Then it was lynch mob violence. Now it's the execution of innocent black men by the cops, and into a higher form of justice. It's a painful sort of birthing process to take our country to a higher, better place, but it's necessary, and most people in this country see that.
But, Ben, why are we not seeing a more unified message nationwide so that any time Black Lives Matter takes to the streets, whether it's in Ferguson, St. Paul, Baton Rouge, Dallas, that they sort of follow the same ideals? And what I'm thinking about mostly is during the civil rights movement, when Dr. King said, look, whenever we do something, wherever we are, it's going to look exactly the same way. We're not going to resist the police. If they beat us on our heads, we're just going to sit there and take it. That was what changed laws. Here, it seems that there's sometimes a muddling of messages, and I don't know if that's because of social media or 24-hour news networks.
You know, in the civil rights movement, there are two traditions that very much kind of work together throughout history, even though there's often tension between them. One is the top-down tradition of the church, of the NAACP, very structured, very disciplined. The other is the bottom-up tradition. You see this more with, for instance, SNCC or Fannie Lou Hamer. You know, this is Jesse Jackson when he was really young, Julian Bond, Diane Nash when they were really young. Lots of tension with Dr. King, lots of tension with the NAACP. Not as disciplined at first, get more disciplined over time. And I think that's what you'll see with the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, these days where, young people tweet out every thought they have, it's easy, I think, to, kind of focus on that noise. But when you really, frankly, step back, what you see is they do have a very clear message. Black Lives Matter. They do have ones that go with that. These killings have to stop. Folks are hearing that, and I think, quite frankly, most people either aren't on Twitter or they tend to just sort of dismiss that kind of noise as just noise.
Would they benefit from a sort of putting out a suggested guideline for when you put together a protest? For example, perhaps a lot of Americans would like to see that there aren't signs and slogans calling for violence against police officers. And, sometimes you see that, and they may not be part of the movement, but they're there nonetheless.
Look, you see that in town after town, people trying to bring some sort of discipline to the crowd. When people start to chant things that are wrong, you'll see the crowd respond and say, we are bigger than that, we are better than that, and kind of shame them. But at the same time, the reality is that this movement is fueled by people breaking their silence. And sometimes when somebody breaks their silence for the first time, they say the wrong thing, but they show up to the next rally and the next rally, and they learn. You don't really make bottom-up movements stronger by imposing top-down discipline. That has to come from the bottom up too.
That's a good point. All right, let me ask you about this. Alicia Keys launched a PSA, I'm Being Black in America. And last night, 4 NBA stars made a very powerful announcement while opening up the ESPY Awards. Let's take a listen.
The events of the past week have put a spotlight on the injustice, distrust, and anger that plague so many of us.
We stand here tonight accepting our role in uniting communities to be the change we need to see.
The racial profiling has to stop. The shoot-to-kill mentality has to stop. Not seeing the value of black and brown bodies has to stop.
Let's use this moment as a call to action for all professional athletes to educate ourselves, explore these issues, speak up, use our influence, and renounce all violence. And most importantly, go back to our communities, invest our time, our resources, help rebuild them, help strengthen them, help change them. We all have to do better. Thank you.
And listening to those four athletes yesterday, it was very, very moving. It reminded me almost that we hadn't seen something like this since 1968 with Tommy Smith and John Carlos. What role do you think that athletes and celebrities play in this discussion?
Look, these are our young people's heroes, regardless of the color of the children in our family. They tend to look up to black musicians, black athletes. And the reality is that those athletes live dual lives. One is on screen, and those rappers and those artists too. One is on screen where they're heroes, and the other is when they get back into their car, they try to cross the street, and they are just black in this country, and they fear the cops too often, and they fear for the children too often. And I think it's healthy for our country to frankly let them bring their full selves to the screen and say, here I am. I'm afraid too, even though I'm your hero, and right now I need you to be my hero and join with all of us in helping to move our country forward.
Ben Jealous in Baltimore, we thank you for a great discussion, sir. Thanks.